Oh,
But
sweet.
that time you didn't have to face them backwards, like,
No.
these ones you have to face them backwards,
Oh.
and, like, they can't see anything, and you can't console them, cause you can't be looking
Right.
at them.
Can't touch 'em.
and-
Oh, the car seat had a little plastic strap went across here, and they put their legs through it. It was quite secure.
And it had
Yeah.
two little things that kind of just went under the, not strapped in or anything.
No, it had like a rocking chair. It went under the back, so it was quite. Yeah, it was really secure. It's a wonder we weren't all killed.
Drinking water from the
Car
hose.
seats
Yeah,
on the
really.
chair.
Now and then.
Riding in the back of the truck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know that's still legal. Now you gotta be belted in, but you can be in the back of a truck. And that way you become a flying missile. Crazy.
So, yeah, that's what we do.
This one work? Yep.
She said he screamed all the way through. I said, he's just resting up for that home.
It's fine. Keeps me awake, so.
Positive way to look at that.
Are you back to teaching?
Monday, yep, this past Monday, so this is my third day.
All right.
Yep, yeah, he was up from 3:45 to 5 this morning. My alarm went off at 5 o'clock,
Oh,
and I
my
said,
word.
okay, here we go, Taylor.
Oh, wow. Oh, he goes, that's me.
Yep, yep.
Cute.
We're in Romans chapter 12.
Finally.
I know. And I was telling Carol and I were talking that we have to get through that tonight because Romans 13 is Sunday with Greg, so we can spend a minimum of 2 class periods on 12, but we won't be able to. So well, that's okay. We'll get it. What's the overall? I'm gonna take just 3 or 4 minute detour here, or reminder, or recall. What's the overall message of Romans? One word. Unity. What was their problem with? Obviously, if that's what was written, there must have been a problem of having unity. And what was that?
Mostly, oh, sorry, Austin.
No, yeah, they grew up on different sides of the train.
Yeah.
tracks.
You had the Jews, you had the Gentiles, and the Jews. What great? I'll use the word pride. I think it's probably what it was. What was their? We're going to see it about verses 3 or 4 here. You're not supposed to have this, but what was their claim to fame, so to speak?
God's chosen people.
We're God's people, always have been.
And they had the law.
We've got the law, by the way, and you better keep it down to the nth degree. We're sons and daughters of Abraham. And up until Acts 10, only the gospel went to the Jews. So they were feeling pretty good. And we remember we saw in Acts 2 where the church, there were people from Rome there on Pentecost where 3,000 were baptized and then more after that. So the church in Rome started with Jews, no question about it. And they were quite proud of their lineage and so on. So then once the word got out that the gospel was for all people, the Gentiles came in and they were, so you've got 2 classes of people here, 2 nationalities really, and they're, each one of them got to be pretty proud of who they were, as we see in Romans 11, even with the Gentiles. And but something major event happened, providential, I think, that kind of put the Jews in their place, so to speak. What was that?
Got kicked out.
The Roman emperor kicked them all out of Rome for maybe 5 or 6 years. I've heard maybe as much as 7 years. So I guess the church folded then. With the Gentiles, no, not at all.
They stepped up.
They stepped up to the plate, and now 6 years later, whatever, the Jews come back and say, okay, now it's time for you to move over. And the Gentiles said, I don't think so.
We got this.
We got this. And they said, well, but we had it before. So it was just this natural, well, how natural it was, but anyway, this animosity that they had toward each other. And God, through the Holy Spirit, through Paul, obviously saw that and said, let's have a little history lesson here. Let's talk about these things. So, when you see the word therefore in verse 12, it's not the first word, but it's the fourth word. I beseech you therefore. What's that therefore? Go back, not only to chapter 11, but really the whole book. The whole book. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. What's important about those two words? A living sacrifice. Living. What's the connotation with living?
Action. And you have to
Action.
be doing something.
Active, doing, ongoing. So, sacrifice. So what does that entail? It's a living, active, action-packed, ongoing life of sacrifice. Of sacrifice. That you present your bodies. So what does that imply? Present your bodies. What did they present before as sacrifices? Bodies of animals. He said, now I want you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice. I thought we were saved by grace. Well, we are. But he expects us to do things that we have to deny ourselves. That's what a sacrifice is. Giving, that's implied in that. Acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. Some say spiritual service. Another version, I think, says rational service. So I think he gets their attention there and he says, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The word transform there is where we get the word metamorphosis. Aren't you a science teacher?
Social studies.
Social studies. But we've all had science. Metamorphosis. When the butterfly, some of the elementary, they bring in the butterflies or the little caterpillars, and they blossom, if you will, into a full-fledged butterfly. Do they do that from the inside out or from the outside in? The inside out. So what does that say about? He said, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Don't be conformed to this world. Don't become like the world, but be like the butterfly. You need to change on the inside and blossom, so to speak, into what you need to be. That's what that word means. Metamorphosis, transformed. By the renewing of your mind. Any ideas or thoughts there? I'm going to get to some things here in just a second. Anything at all?
It's complete.
Complete. It's not partial. It's a complete. Michelle?
In the book, Mark had said, I just liked, it was one sentence, it's talking about this living sacrifice. He said it's what we do and who we are because of God's mercy. I said that's our actions and who we are on the inside, but it's because of God.
Absolutely. He also, now I think this was Robert Turner, but I like his book, Living Sacrifice, an instrument by which we render our service to God. We're the instrument that when we render service to God by this living sacrifice. Okay, anybody, Carolyn?
When you give a sacrifice, you don't get to keep it. Your body it's given to God. It's not yours to be in charge of anymore.
It's not. Really good point. You can serve one or two masters. Can't serve both. If you serve God, you give your life to Him. Really good point.
And that contrast there, I mean, to conform to the world is the opposite choice. It'd be a lot easier to be a chameleon and just blend in and not lift a finger, so to speak.
Yes, I mean, we'll be real honest here. Have we all tried to do that in our lives? I have. Because it's easier. It's easier to blend in with the world. don't go along with it, but I don't want to cause any ripples here. I don't want them to think whatever. It's easy to blend in, and he said you can't do that. You cannot do that. Now in verse 3, anybody else before I move? Those are good comments. Verse 3, for I say through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, what? Remember, unity, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. Could that be a barrier to unity? Big time, couldn't it? To think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think. That could be a real barrier in the church. He's got several other things here, but that's the first one. That's a big deal.
And the
Nicole?
Jews didn't think much of the Gentiles, anyone who wasn't a Jew. So that would have hit home with them.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Taylor?
That's even outside of, like, specifically religiously, it's just kind of a good train of thought in how to live, period. Like, if you're on a sports team and you think you're the best on the team, you're not going to be able to be united with your team, right? Like, you have to have equal trust in everyone. In this sense, trust as well, but you gotta kind of all see yourselves on the same playing field. You're all sinners, you're all hopefully trying to do your best, be there for each other, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good analogy of a team. You got your teammates back. Hey, to use a common kind of vernacular, but you've got your teammates back, and if you think so highly of yourself, that's not going to lend to unity at all. Is that a danger, or could that be a danger today in the church? It could be. It absolutely could be. What are some of the things that might make one think of themselves more highly than they should? There's all kinds of possibilities there.
Economic status.
Yeah, economic status, family status.
How long you've been a Christian.
How long, and we've talked about that earlier. Well, doesn't matter. How long you've been a Christian. That could give somebody a little bit of an attitude, as they say.
Your education.
Education could be.
How involved you are in church service or class teaching.
That's right. How involved you are. And well, you know that Seth led singing today, and I didn't get to do anything. Well, there's a lot wrong with that. Number one, it's not about you. And we're going to see this in a second with all of our talents. Not everybody has the same talents. I think it's really good if we don't. He goes on to say, one body. If you were talking about one body, first of all, what is the body? One. Where might you go? Ephesians 4. Colossians 1 and 2, and other places. But, there's one body. Well, that's fine. But, what does he say next? Many members. Now, here's the rub. It's kind of like the joke we used to say when I was a teacher. Teach a school would be great if it wasn't for the kids. Tongue in cheek, sorta. There's the rub. Yes, one body. Oh, we get behind that. But there are many members, and then look at verse 4. But all members do not have the same function. They don't have the same function. Is that a plus or minus? Should be a real plus. Should be a plus. And he says, for we being many are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another. Is what Taylor was talking about. We're members of one another. There's that unity coming back again. And then having gifts in verse 6, having gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let each one, now I got personal. Let each one use them. Use them. But what if I only had one talent? What are we supposed to do?
Use it.
You better use it. God expects you to use it, me to use it. If you have more talents, you better use those as well. And he's going to list some of those here in just a little bit. And in verse 6, do you think that's supernatural? Or is that those natural gifts? Remember where we are, it's about 60 AD, somewhere in that neighborhood, 58 to 60. The New Testament wasn't completed yet. It will be in about 35 or 6 years.
During this time, there were probably some of both.
There were both.
Yeah.
There were, particularly when he says, if prophecy, he said, if God gives you, the Holy Spirit gives you the ability to prophesy, do what? Do it. Do it. Prophesy. Ministry or service, you have that ability, do it. Use it. Ministry, service to who? To yourself? Service to others. Service to others. If you're a teacher, teach. But take it seriously, because Paul said in Hebrews, don't everybody become a teacher. Because, it carries a big weight, doesn't it, Andy? It does. Whether you're a preacher, teacher, whatever, you better put some time and diligence into this. It's not some game. But teach it if you got that. He who exhorts, exhort. Encourage. Now, can we all encourage? We can. Now, some are just better than others. It doesn't make it right or wrong. But if we can all exhort or encourage one another, we can. Do elders need encouragement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your people.
Your people. Preachers,
Yes.
new converts,
Yes.
they need it a lot. Yes, encourage them. Encourage them. What about if you give? If you have the ability to give with liberality. Give with liberality. He who leads, if you're going to lead, lead. They used to say in business, lead or get out of the way. You're clogging up the aisles here. I've heard that before. If you're going to lead, dude, lead. Or step aside. So, lead. He who shows mercy with cheerfulness. Now, what's the implication there? He who shows mercy, or she who shows mercy with cheerfulness. What's the opposite of cheerfulness?
Begrudgingly.
I'm going to do this again. However, he said, don't do that. If you're going to do it cheerfully. Do it cheerfully. Now, we don't get up every day feeling the greatest. And sometimes, we need to go here, we need to do that. Well, you do need to. And you don't always feel like doing it, but you do it. You do it. Don't make excuses. Questions or thoughts or on any of those things. I want to look now. Anything? I want to look now at when he's starting in verse 9. I'm going to read this in a second. Love. You've heard these before. However, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip here. First one he mentions is agape. The second is storge. It's not storage. And the other is philos, if you will. Let's read that just a second. Let's see if it gets some meaning out of this. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. The word, this first love in verse 9 is agape love. Agape. That's the love that the Lord had for mankind when he gave himself. It's what word are we looking for? Sacrificial. A sacrificial. I don't know if that's right or not. Sacrificial love. He said, Have a sacrificial love without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. Then he says, the next one, be kindly affectionate. We don't say that phrase, be kindly affectionate. This is also the word love, but it's storge in the original, and it's a family type of love. Love you'd have for your parents, your children, your aunts and uncles, you fill in the blank. More of a family kind of love. Why would that be important? What are we again, Taylor? We're a family. So love your church family like you would your own people. And then the next one he says, to one another, this gives this one away, with brotherly love and honor, giving preference to one another. So phileos, brotherly love, city of brotherly love. So that, Philadelphia. So it's interesting that Paul uses three different, our language is not the most beautiful language in the world compared to some of these very flowery kind of languages, where love here is three different words. We would just say love today, but not here. And I think it's interesting that he chose to use all three. He said, now, unity, don't think of yourself higher than you ought to. Be willing to sacrifice yourself for your brothers and sisters. Be willing to love your family, the church family like your own family. Hard to do sometimes. And then the brotherly love, a love for your brothers and sisters. So that all three of those words are used there, which I think is kind of interesting. Any thoughts there? Now here, before I do that, go ahead. Any comments? Okay, here, kind of got a little bit too far here. I'm just going to use the word preference here. Here's another way for unity, to have unity in Rome or anywhere else. Don't think of yourself too highly. And in verse 10, in honor, giving preference to the other, to one another. You want to have unity? Don't think too highly of who you are, or what you've accomplished, or what you've been given. Prefer others above yourself. And you're not going to have a lot of unity problems. And there are some others we're going to touch on here in just a minute. Thoughts on that? In fact, if you would, question number 1, let's go ahead and fill this one in. We've got the first two for you. Question number 1, I think it's a good time to do it. This chapter starts a new section full of practical exhortations. How does this relate to Romans' overall theme of church unity? We got 2 of them here. This is verse 3. This is verse 6. Sorry for that. How else can we have unity? How'd you answer that, the first question? Look at verse 13. I'll give you a little tip. How else can we have unity? Given to hospitality. It says given to hospitality. How can we do that? It's interesting that the word given there, and Mark brings this up. Hospital. Come on, Seth. Well, won't see it.
Just use a tissue.
Just change
There you
the F into an I.
I-T-Y.
Hospitality.
There you go.
You're a school teacher. The word there for hospitality is pursue. In the original meant pursue hospitality. Not necessarily just let it happen, but pursue hospitality. And the original, the context was among strangers. among strangers. So you want to have unity? Don't think too highly of yourself. Give preference to others. And pursue or run after hospitality. That's how you have unity, and that's how, because you're giving, all these things in common have the idea of giving. Giving. If Jesus gave his life for us, we surely can give our life for him, what we have left. Anybody have any others of question number one?
I just put get along, get connected, and get busy.
That's it.
Keep it simple.
I like that.
Yeah, you cut to the chase better than I do sometimes. Verse 18, live in peace, or live peaceably, pursue peace. How do you have unity? Try to live in peace among each other. And he says, much as depends on you. Now, it's not always possible. Some people wake up in the morning, every morning, seems like in a bad mood, and you try your best. But some people you try. Sometimes you gotta cut the toxicity out of your life and kind of move on. But you live in peace. That helps unity. You don't have to have your way. I don't have to have my way every time. Live in peace. And I skipped one of the biggest ones. Verse 16, what does that say? In unity, peace.
Same mind.
Be of the same mind. Now, how's that possible? What does that mean, do you think? Be of the same mind.
If you're like thinking the same way, right? Like your goals, I guess, and everything that you're thinking.
Okay.
I think of like a-
Similar goals, same goals, Christian. Kimberly, that's good.
Does he mean doctrinally or in this way?
I think it could be either.
Okay.
I think doctrine is, that's a good point, actually. But be of the same mind. If you have the same source of authority, then you can be of the same mind. And you're not going to be having all this constant bickering about, well, I think my grandmother said that never ends.
Like not adding your own thoughts to what it
Right.
says. And
Right. We just go by this. A long time ago that Alexander Campbell said that we speak where the Bible speaks. We're silent where the Bible is silent. We say Bible things in Bible ways. What's the central theme of all of that? The Bible. The Bible. But no, Kim, I didn't have that, but I like that. I like that a lot. It is, you can be of the same mind if you don't think of yourself too highly, if you prefer others over yourself, if you pursue hospitality, don't wait for somebody, just pursue it. You live in peace with all people as much as you can, and you have the same standard. You have the same standard. That makes sense? Any other thoughts on that? Do you have any others? I think there's one or two more there, but you don't have to stretch too much to put on that list, but those are the ones that I had.
I think at number 6, in verse 16, the other key word is humility.
Oh, big time. Yes. Was that verse 16?
Yeah.
Humility. You can trace back a lot of problems in the church over the years, been around a long time, to the lack of that. Lack of that. You're not of the same mind because you got to have it your way, and you're not humble. You're not humble about it. So Paul says, you want to be united in Rome? or you want to be united Monte Vista 2,000 years later, do these things. And you can do it.
It's like the how-to chapter.
It is. It's very practical. Very, very practical.
I like how verse 18 is bookended with 17 and 19, which kind of say the same thing about not paying back evil for evil
Yep.
or taking revenge. You know, there's a quote on page 200 of the book that I underlined, is revenge keeps evil in circulation. I mean,
That too.
at some point the cycle's just gotta stop.
I highlighted that very thing.
Yeah, it was pretty profound and simple.
Revenge keeps it in circulation. If you just rely on God, he said, "What? Revenge is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord." And you can keep these things, and if you're not real careful, you can look at the world's stage. Somebody's retaliating for something they did, which was the reason they retaliated. And next thing you know, you got almost a world war going on in certain places because of this constant vengeance seeking. And don't do that. Now, is that easy? Well, you know, they were not very nice to me. I wonder why they said that, whatever. And you just wait. Your day's coming. You can't think like that. It's hard not to sometimes. We're all human beings. You gotta be honest about it. But who was the Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount? Jesus said you can't do these things. In Matthew 5, 6, and 7, those chapters. Wonderful chapters. You can't do them. Could he have had a vengeful attitude? Oh my. Yes, he could. He didn't. And we're not above the master. He expects us to do that. But I'll be the first one to say that's not always easy to do. Any thoughts on that?
I think about the common phrase that you hear, let go and let God. It kind of sums up a lot. It's not really for you, it's for him to take care of.
It's above your pay grade.
Yeah.
We use that one sometimes. It's just, God's got all the facts. Sometimes we just kind of glean a few things here and there and make a straw man. And it didn't mean to be that way at all, Karen.
When I'm struggling with this, I try to think how much better at it God is than I could be.
Oh,
He is so
yeah.
much more creative,
Yeah.
and you see examples throughout, and I just think, yeah, I couldn't do anything that good anyway, so just let it be that.
That's true. I like that. When you go over to 1 Corinthians chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, they had, I think either Robert Turner or one of the guys I was reading about said that they call this gift envy. Gift envy. What do you think that means? Remember, he just said some of you have exhortation, some of you have prophecy, some of you have these things.
Jealous of other people's.
Rank them.
Yeah. Wonder why I didn't get to. Well, what was it in 1 Corinthians 11, 12, 13, 14? Tongues. Tongues. Because it's more dramatic, it's more public, it's more showy. But he said, tongues is way down on the list. But they had gift envy. And they were stirring the church up in Corinth too. So I don't think that's out of context at all on some of these things that these gifts that he lists under the overarching theme of unity. Don't be getting this now. I wish I could lead singing. Well, here's a news flash. I can't. But I love the men that can. I can't. Does that make me a bad person? No. I can't lead singing. But in heaven, I'm going to be a wonderful tenor singer. I know it. That's my goal. That's going to be wonderful.
Dad,
Yeah.
just on with that, in verse 6, my favorite part of that, which we really didn't talk a whole lot about, it says, since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. It doesn't say, if you have a gift, so since we have, number one, they've been given to us, but we all have them. And so sometimes when we get this, it's easy to be like, well, I'm not good at that, and so we just don't. And we don't go, okay, what am I good at? List it, write it down. If you're not good at something, get good at something. Find somebody who is, shadow them, ask them, find
Yeah,
out. Like,
yeah.
we have some onus in this process too.
We do. Because it's easy to do now.
Sure.
I don't have that. I don't have that. I guess I won't do it. Won't try to do anything. Find out what it is. You've all got them. We've all got them. God don't make junk. We may only have one talent or two talents. Use it or them. There's no gift to envy in the Lord's church. That flies in the face of all these things we've just talked about here. And in the first century, Corinthian church didn't get it. The Roman church didn't get it. But hopefully they got it after Paul finishes with them. He rips them up pretty good. But he also is encouraging it at the same time. Other thoughts or comments on that?
You said it earlier, I mean, think about what it would be like if we all were basically the same. It's not much of a team. I mean,
No.
There wouldn't be much unity either.
No.
No.
the comparison would probably even be stronger. I mean, it'd be worse. Yeah, there's no way to, it's just bizarre to think about.
Try to walk around without, so I'm just an ugly big toe. Try to walk around without your big toes. Good luck on that. They're very needed, even though they're, as Michelle would say, they're pretty ugly. Pretty ugly, but they're very useful to the body. Everything's not an eye. He says in another place, everything's not an ear. But you put all that together, you got a beautiful body of people doing what they can do. And God expects all of us to do what we can do. There's no laying back. There shouldn't be any laying back. And if you do all of that, Paul says it's going to have a good church. You're going to have a unified church.
I like the layout that Paul has done. He starts off with, you're messing up, and so we need to address that. It says, this is what needs to be done. There's no point telling them what in detail here, no point giving them the practical application until they agree that they need it. You know, you've gotta start with getting them on the same page to want to be unified, and giving them those goals, and then you say, okay, and now here's how.
A really good point. What's any kind of Alcoholics Anonymous? You can fill in the blank, and you know you deal with this kind of stuff every day, Cameron, in your work. What's the first thing that you have to come to grips with? I have a problem. Ooh, that hurts to say. But once you admit I have this problem, you can fill in the blank. I have this problem. Then you can deal with it. Now you may need help. People like a Kimberly in a hospital. But you may need help. Then guess what? Seek it out. Seek it out. Probably amazed how many people in the church have had or probably have had the same problem that you have. You may not know it. And we talk about these things in our ladies' class, don't we? And that ladies' class has grown. It's unbelievable. Am I telling the truth? That the first class show you how that we can be unified even with diversity of all levels. The ladies we're trying to came up with some icebreakers and tried to get them talking, and nobody really wanted to talk too much. That's fine. We're gonna meet again, and we're gonna stay at it. And we were having hospitality with one another. We were eating, and next thing you know, these some of their best friends are the people in their group. Now, is that right, Nicole?
That is right.
And they got each other's back. And I see them in their little groups talking about maybe she's got this problem and she's listening. Now, I'm not listening to see what they're talking about, but I know that they're listening and they'll be helping one another. That's a microcosm of a church with 13, 14, 15 people, ladies. That's how a church ought to be. Well, what's it gonna take to get there, like our ladies group? Work, and what?
Willing to participate.
Willing to participate,
Don't think too highly of yourself, prefer others.
all those things, all those things, and pursue hospitality. We don't get to know each other as well as we can, and boy, they think they've learned stuff. I'm the one to learn from that class. How people can come together in a period of just a couple of years, really. And that's how the church really ought to be. But we gotta be with one another.
Outside the building.
Outside the building, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. I know that. Well, we all live 30 miles from the building in different directions, which makes in some cases an hour from each other. I know that. But God expects us to do it. He gave us a brain to think and to come up with those kinds of things. All right, we will do 13 on Sunday with Greg, and he's going to tell us, Paul, in chapter 13, why we don't need to take vengeance ourselves. Why? Because he sets up the government to punish people who do us wrong or have criminals or whatever. That's how it was set up originally, anyway, in chapter 13. So we'll talk about that on Sunday with Greg. Thank you very much.